Welcome to
We did it!
Worship Leader Wednesday.
Look at us!
We're back live.
Guys, this is actually like the first time in a year and a half
Have we been in this
this room.
Let the chaos begin. No,
Yes.
that's not true.
We're so glad that you are joining us today. We got it off the top. Who is it? Walt DaCosta.
That's still different.
Thank you for your super chat, Walt. We are so appreciative. Hey, if you have a question for us, let us know in the comments. Today we're talking about change. And you know the first thing I see is my exposure is off on my camera.
It looks fine.
That looks real bright.
Nah, it's fine.
Okay, so we
It
haven't...
looks better there, though.
It does. You know what? But the exposure meter on the camera tells me that I'm bright. I just was judging by this.
Anyways.
We'll use this as an opportunity to say we have not gone live in a long time.
Been a minute.
And many things have changed here in the studio, especially with the live setup. So, if you experience any technical difficulties, if you think that the exposure on the camera is not right, or if the audio doesn't sound good, let us know. Hopefully everything is cool. Oh wait, you know what we forgot? We forgot this. Worship Leader Wednesday Live is back. I assume there was a DJ airhorn that just happened. We can't hear it, but that's what should have happened.
Hey, hopefully we have audio. Do we have audio, everyone?
Yeah, I can
hear
see
us?
audio
Okay.
on the thing.
You can see audio?
I can see audio. Yes, I see a little.
My
green bar.
eyes have verified that there is audio.
That's how senses work. Fuller,
That's
don't
right.
You know?
That's right.
All right. Today we're talking change.
It's a buzzword.
Bradford posted. You know what? This is going to bother me. I'm going to fix the exposure
Okay.
on the camera.
Alright,
Oh my God.
I'll talk about it.
See, some things never change.
Speak amongst yourselves.
Brian just, he can't handle
Can't leave well enough
the
alone.
1% extra exposure.
But hey, this is a lesson that
How's that?
we're always striving
Is that
to
better?
make it
Oh my
better.
gosh, you just went from like paint by numbers to Mona Lisa, Brian.
I know.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Well,
now
I can't exactly tell.
now we're properly
We're
exposed.
not there yet.
All right. Coming in loud and clear. Chris, thank you.
Let us know if the exposure got better. Wow, this is turned into a live camera tutorials. .com.
That scared me for a second. That was just power, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that's power. I gotta plug my computer back in. Okay,
Too
so
dark.
Bradford posted on
Somebody's logged into my...
Instagram. Where did you post about
Instagram, our group.
all kinds of social media stuff? Bradford,
There, that looks good. It
dude,
just
that
changed.
does look
That
good.
looks good.
I am impressed.
This is no.
That looks
you are
straight
no
up
slouch.
like an
I have-
oil painting from the
I have
French
impressed
Renaissance.
myself. If you're curious about we'll talk about the live equipment setup at later. We're talking change.
Right, nice.
Bradford posted on Instagram mostly, I think, and some
our
other places,
Facebook
Facebook group, that we're going live, and he polled you, what do you want to talk about? And there were lots of questions that came in, but most of them had to do with dealing with change.
Like an
In your
overarching
ministries.
general theme was change.
Change.
So we might pull in some of those specific questions that you guys asked, because I think Bradford has them on his phone.
I do.
So if you see us interacting with screens either down here or on our phones, it's not because we're not interested. It's because we're trying to interact with you, the viewers.
Or if the stock market did something really crazy and we got to sell real fast.
My
I
money.
have someone that takes care of that.
Somebody told me to invest in SoFi.
Yeah. That's
There you go.
okay. So
Jonathan Sullivan.
one thing. So it's interesting that we bring this up because all three of us have experienced a great deal of change in our ministry positions lately. Now, we're not going to talk about that in this video unless we just decide to go into
That's
it.
lame.
But all three of us have, you might have remembered or seen content where we talk about all working for the same church. And that was true. Fuller was the Global Worship Arts Director. Was that your official title? It changed.
I think so. I had several
over time.
titles.
Yeah, so anyway, Fuller was the guy in
change.
charge. Fuller hired Bradford and I.
If you don't like change, don't get into ministry.
And
Fuller
it was
hired
the two greatest decisions I ever made.
Fuller hired Bradford and I about 9 years ago now.
Wow, that makes us sound old. How can I still be 30 and have hired you?
Yeah, it was. We were about a
You
month.
were a
month and
sophomore
half
in
apart.
college when New Hope hired you.
I was in high school.
Yeah, we started within a month of one another.
Yep.
Yeah.
At New Hope. And then
2012.
under Fuller's tutelage,
That's almost 9
we
years
became
ago.
Swansons. Yeah,
That's right. We had some good times and we had some good times.
We had some good times and some better times.
That's right.
Anyway, Fuller was sort of a mentor to Bradford and I.
Aww.
And And we served at that church for quite a many years. You guys on staff the whole time you were there. I was on staff for about half the time I was there.
Yep.
And then I quit my job.
How dare you?
To do the YouTube.
Fine. You're fired.
Full time. Yeah.
I fired Brian.
You can't fire me. I quit.
I cannot accept this.
Pre-quit.
and so we dealt with change in that regard. But like within the past couple years,
Other things have changed.
we are not we're not at that church anymore.
We've all taken the road diverged.
We've all sort of moved on to different ministry positions, and that happens in life a lot. I mean, like how many of you are at the same church that you were always at for all time?
It happens, but it's not.
But it's rare.
It's rare. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all dealing with change in our own personal lives.
Right.
Fuller is. What are you doing currently? Let's kind of get a catch up since we're all here in the room.
When I left my last church, I kind of started my own business that I've been working on. Obviously, I work here with Brian and Brad at Worship Tutorials. Mm-hmm. I also run a music production company, and I also do contract worship still because that's my heart to do worship for the church. So I have a local church that I do contract worship with, a very minimal part-time basis.
Yep.
And then I produce music for television.
And that is, what's the name of that church?
Oasis Church in Holly Springs. It's awesome. Pastor Bill is amazing. So been doing that, and lots of change there. It's almost like a restart for me, which has been awesome. And producing music for television and little other investments too. So
yeah. And I am plugging it. Well, let's go Bradford next. We'll just go down the line.
Yeah.
What have you been up to, Bradford?
Oh, and I have 4 kids. That's important.
That didn't change though.
That's speaking of change. That kind of helps lead change, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Let's see. My son was my first child was actually born last year.
Yeah.
Like 36 hours before North Carolina went on lockdown. And so it's been an interesting 16, 17 months. And then February of this year, I stepped away from the church. It had seemed kind of clear that God was leading me to kind of pursue this little YouTube thing a little bit more and everything that this entails. And come February, I stepped away to do this. And I was at New Hope for 8.5 years.
I feel like Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
But before that, it was hockey cards. I collected hockey cards.
And so I've been doing that, and since I was like 15 or 16, I think I have been leading worship in some capacity almost every single week.
Yeah.
Couple weeks off here and there, maybe 2-3 in a row on in summer or whatever. But through high school, I went to private school. I was leading there. At college, I pretty much jumped into ministry right away. Came here, and so I have been stepping away and kind of, I'm on the other side of ministry now, which is an interesting
What is the other side? Like the volunteer side?
Well, yeah, the volunteer side. So I've been filling in at some churches, and when the call has come, and my wife and I are contemplating on selling our house and moving to get. I haven't told you this yet, but I haven's seen much of you lately. I'll tell you later.
Tell me when tell everyone else.
All kinds of change happen.
But so it's
you
been
need to move
great.
into my neighborhood, Brad.
There's a lot of reasons why that's not
A
going to happen.
neighborhood. You need to move into a
You should move
neighborhood.
to Beverly Hills and start
I don't live in Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills.
You need to move into a neighborhood close to my neighborhood.
We'll start there.
We'll figure that out.
Okay.
I can sell you my house.
I'm listening. So we've been enjoying it. It's been a different season, and you may notice that the uploads of patches and videos have gone up a little bit. We've been able to put a little more to it.
I've noticed.
Yeah, it has.
They
It
have.
has.
They
I've
have.
noticed. Yeah.
They have. So, anyways,
Yeah.
and I switched to Geico and I saved a bunch of money on my car insurance.
There you go.
So easy.
At least
It's
it's
Slept
so
at a
easy.
Holiday Inn last night.
So easy.
Had a Kit Kat this morning, or had a Snickers this morning. All
That's
that.
right.
It really satisfies you.
It really does.
Yeah.
Satisfying.
So I'll go next.
Lots of change.
So-
Note though, these are all changes that we initiated.
Yeah.
So these are changes we've
Yeah,
made.
which is going to be a
Which is
point that
different
we're
than
gonna
when
talk
someone
about.
else makes changes and you.
Because changes are great when you're the one in charge.
That's
That
right.
is very true.
And we'll talk about that. So I've been plugging into a church I have
Two
not
churches actually.
Yeah, a couple churches. One's Fuller's church.
I begged Brian to come play guitar with me.
And I've gotten to know a pastor in my neighborhood, and he's actually lives closer to Fuller. Fuller and I used to live in the same actual neighborhood. Then I moved a mile. We're technically in the same neighborhood, but it takes an extra 2 minutes.
Forest and a pool between us.
Yes.
It's just not the same.
There used to just be 4 houses.
Yeah.
Now there is 20 houses. Right? So
and a really big hill.
Yeah, and a big hill. So, but anyway, there's a pastor of a local church that lives in our neighborhood.
Really cool guy.
And I got to know him. Here's the thing about this church. So when we moved into our neighborhood, Fuller and I moved in around the same time. We got to know the neighbors. Really great people live in our neighborhood. Super diverse. So people from all different sorts of ethnic, but also backgrounds as far as social backgrounds, church.
Lots of countries, different countries.
You could see a lot of people were resistant to the idea of church.
Yes.
Because we would talk to people about our church, and I think this is typical of America. And I could go on a long tangent about this, but I won't. Just a short one. You could see that people were hesitant about the idea of church, and I gathered that they had either been to churches before and seen things that they really didn't like, probably hypocrisy, because it's rampant in our churches, and or maybe they had a false impression about church. Maybe they didn't see something. Maybe they just were church is not for them,
or had a family member burned, or various reasons.
All of a sudden, all these people started talking about going to this church. And they were all going to this pastor's church. And it's a local church. I've never really gone to a church that's close to where I lived before. So that was something that I was really interested in. But I started seeing my neighbors were talking to me about going to this church. I was like, what is going on? Whatever is happening at this place, I might want to be a part of that. Because whatever it was about this place, it was attracting people.
It was drawing people.
It was drawing people to it that were previously sort of opposed to the idea of church. So I've been plugging in there and helping out, and I have loved getting to know the people there. And it's given me an opportunity as a volunteer that I'm not looking for a job in church. I don't think I ever want to work for a church again, but I absolutely want to pour my heart and soul and life into it. We could talk about that in another
it's good
video as well.
Good topic.
But I have really enjoyed plugging in there and getting to know people. And it's giving me an opportunity to lead a little bit. I'm not the worship leader, and I'm under the leadership of somebody else, which is another important thing.
Really cool.
But yeah, so it's been really good. That's what's going on in our lives. Let's talk about now change. We mentioned something.
Change.
Let's talk about you guys now.
Whew.
Let us know in the comments what kinds of things you're going through in your churches. I know that with COVID, churches had to pivot. We've made content about that.
Churches in general have had to change.
Yeah, but many of you are sort of getting back into church. Churches have opened up here in the United States. I know many of you are also watching from elsewhere in the world where that's not the case, because there still is a global pandemic happening. And we have the luxury of anyone can get a vaccine here in the U.S., but that's not the truth everywhere else in the world. And please, if you're here in the U.S., please go get a vaccine. We're not going to talk about that in the comments. We implore you.
Yes. It'd be helpful.
Do it for the safety of you and those around you. We've
all three been vaccinated.
We have all gotten
We're all
vaccines,
here kicking. No sicknesses. No, no deaths.
Bill Gates is not monitoring my. At least I don't think so. And if he was, I don't care. What do I got to hide?
A lot of conspiracies.
All the monitoring is happening on this device.
If you're worried about being tracked,
if you use a GPS, you're being tracked.
You've got a tracking device in your pocket almost all the time. Okay, we can go on. Let us know what you're going through in the comments. But I know lots of churches are sort of ramping up, and I've had a lot of conversations with people. I think that this moment in time for the church, I believe a lot of churches are reevaluating their ministries, how they do what they do. I think a lot of churches are experiencing, every church that we're involved in is experiencing this, where half the people that used to come to church aren't coming back.
Yeah.
I think that's I think it's 40%.
Lots.
Most
churches have taken massive hits.
Yeah,
for lots of reasons.
So I think churches are really trying to think how are we going to reach these people that used to come here? Not even to mention the people that never came, but like that used to come? How are we going to reach them again? How are we going to engage with them?
Yeah.
So we mentioned earlier, there's two kinds of changes that'll happen to you in ministry. One is the kind that you're a part of doing.
You initiate.
And you're the one in charge of
initiating. And you think it's a great idea and you're excited.
You're all about
Best feeling in the world.
And that's great. And I don't think many of you are asking questions about. Well, maybe you're asking questions about that.
Yeah.
The other kind of change is what happens when you are asked or forced to be. Ren says Bill Gates isn't watching me. Well, you are in a live stream, so he could be. Bill, if you're watching.
Bill, I have
Welcome.
some investment questions I'd like to run by you as well.
I have an interesting investment opportunity for you.
So,
Yes.
No, it's good that you said that, Brian.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
One thing also to consider is that I have a garden, and if it doesn't change, it's unsuccessful.
That's right.
So anything that's alive and growing will change.
If
so
it doesn't, it'll die.
Change is a good thing.
Yeah.
If you've not experienced any change for years and there's no change on the horizon, maybe you should be the catalyst for change, because change is a good thing. When I go to my blueberry garden, I want to see blueberries, not the same leaf that's been there for three years.
Yeah.
So change is a good thing.
Yeah, and a lot of times the change that you're going through it's happening to you. You're not the one in charge.
Yeah.
And that
A
can
lot
be-
of times, yeah.
And that can be very difficult.
Yeah.
Justin, hey Justin Chan, welcome. Justin has a pretty awesome YouTube channel where he does lots of things with like guitars and modeling devices, which is close to our hearts. Justin says his church is not meeting physically. Justin, where do you live? Because I know that you are not in the U.S.
Singapore.
He's in Singapore. Okay, so he's not meeting physically.
He bought my MJT.
Oh, he bought your Strat.
Yeah, my Strat.
You've made a wise choice. All right. So he's not. He says it feels like I'm managing a bunch of recording artists. So we all went through that.
valid.
I just got out of that.
Yeah.
I was doing that for almost 16 months.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, but it's kind of a relief.
Because
For me, it was great because I went from leading worship 15 years in a row every Sunday to producing music at my house and sleeping on Sunday, which was awesome. So there was definitely, for me, it was a season of growth and refreshing, and it was awesome for my family.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, get it done, embrace it, learn stuff, and then also figure out a way to include other people. That's what I did. I was like, it's virtual. I was calling my friends from all over. LA was in one. Like I had people from California sending me videos. So take advantage of that while you have the opportunity.
Well, churches that were in schools. So the church I'm involved in was meeting in a school, and like here in North Carolina, we had to fall. Churches that were in schools had to fall under the state guidelines for meeting in schools. So it's like we just in the past couple months have been able to meet back in schools again. So that's a big deal. Like churches that have their own building, they were able to do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
But if you were meeting in a school, you had to make plans.
My church.
Otherwise,
my church was meeting in high school.
Same
we
with
we
the
just
church
started
house.
meeting a few weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about. Let's tackle some of these specific questions, Bradford. Do you have one or two that like is something that would be what a good group of people, a good number of people might be going through?
Yeah, well, a lot of these questions, like the overarching theme was like, we are here, we want to do this, what do you suggest? Or like, we're experiencing this right now and people don't love it. And that, like overarching, the theme is change. And I think one of the big ones that I don't know why, but this just struck me, like, someone asked, how do you add new songs and getting other musicians to love it? And honestly,
a good question.
And I think it is a good question. And to me, the first thing I thought of was, I said, well, that is change. But also most of it all comes back to vision too. So, I don't know, since I'm already talking, I'll kind of add my 2 cents. This, I could talk forever on this. But if it looks like it's Johan, Instagram makes it very hard to decipher what somebody's actual name may be. But it looks like the individual's name is Johan.
Carrot Top 72.
Asking this, and so I think that's something people struggle with on a couple different sides of things. Like, okay, how often do we introduce new songs? That's a question I see people talk about before. I see people say like the opposite, like we haven't introduced a new song in forever. And then we got Johan saying, well, how do we do that? And we have getting other musicians to love it. my first question is, if you're trying to do something, what's the why behind it? What's the vision behind it? What's your vision for your worship ministry? How does that tie to your church's vision? The vision that the Lord has led and laid on your pastor's heart. How do they line up? And then what are you trying to do, and how does it fulfill that vision? If the answer is, I just dig this song and I think it's super cool.
Good Lord.
That's not.
The Lord is good.
That is.
Hallelujah.
That is not the worst reason.
No.
But it is the most common reason.
But it is not the best reason either.
Yeah.
Introducing new songs, you got to find. I would say you got to find because everything's scalable to a ministry. What would prevent your team from learning that song? I know my team members well enough. I could be like, you know what? If I changed all 4 songs on Saturday night, we could show up and kill it. Because so evaluate your team. Where is your team? How do you think they would be at learning new songs? Why are you doing this song to begin with? And be specific about it. Like, if the reason is because it's new and it's cool, that's probably not good enough. How does it line up with the vision? And from there, cast vision. And the biggest thing is you can't just cast vision once and expect it to stick around. Reinforce the vision regularly. Talk about why you think it's important. And, when this new thing you're trying to implement, there's a win, celebrate that win and cast the vision again so people can see, hey, we talked about doing this, we implemented this, and now look at what has happened because we implemented this. And so people need to be reminded of the vision. People need to be reminded of the why behind the what.
Yes.
So that's my 2
good
cents.
stuff.
That's good.
That's great.
That's my 2 cents.
Let's do a few more questions about songs.
Let's do it.
And this can have to do with change. I love asking Fuller this. How many songs, Fuller, do you think there should be on your sort of roster of songs that you play every week? How big should your song list be?
I'd say no more than 30.
Oh, amen. Glory. Hallelujah.
And if everyone probably looks in their PCO right now,
everyone's
see
like,
over 100.
What did you say?
Yeah, people think I'm crazy when I say this, but we did the math in the worship manual. We talk about this extensively. If you do 4 songs a week on Sunday, 52 Sundays a year.
Yes.
So you do 208. You have 208 slots.
Yep.
For songs.
Yes.
If you did the same song twice in 1 year, you would be down to 104 slots.
Yes.
So you're looking at this going, if you did 104 different songs, you would only do them twice in 1 year.
Twice in a single year.
Yeah.
Which your song list is 100.
Right. And so I think the main problem was we always look at songs from the musician's perspective who are performing them weekly, practicing them weekly, and not the perspective of the congregant who might come twice a month, maybe.
The average.
So
it's twice a month.
If you say you did 104 songs and the average churchgoer only goes twice a month, they might hear one song out
one
of
time.
Yeah, they have 52 times to hear a song.
Yeah.
So
whereas in a week preparing, you maybe heard it
8
twice
times
to
already.
prepare.
Yeah, exactly, easily.
Played it twice at rehearsal.
So,
you as the leader
Yes.
are sick of it.
There was a question on...
But your congregations barely heard it.
There was a question in the chat room a while back on the worship leader group, Brian, and you saw it, and the person was, hey, how do I get the musicians to show up prepared, blah, blah, blah. And the first question I asked was...
how big is your song?
How often does your team serve, and how many songs do you do?
Yeah,
and it's like, there is a direct correlation. I've got tons of data to back this up. The amount of songs you do increases lack of preparation and all of these other frustrations, music stands, all of these things.
We're not talking about music stands.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. So the reality is, I think I figured it out. If you do 30 songs a year, you're only doing each song like 5 times the whole year.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
So it's like, that's once every other month.
Yeah.
And so that's barely even enough time to get your congregation familiar with it, because most of them aren't listening to worship playlists on Spotify. So I implore you, what I try to do, I got about 12 to 18 songs right now, and I'm just rotating them. And then once I see like, okay, we're starting to, all the musicians can play them in their sleep, then I'll be like, all right, let's add a new one.
Yeah.
Let's add a new one. And so...
It's frustrating.
You can solve so many of your problems if you just stop right now and go, I'm only going to do 30 songs for the next year.
Yeah.
You think it's not enough? It's plenty.
You can sort in PCO by when the song was done last. Just start dumping songs, you'll feel better. Everything is scalable though. So like, it's all going to be different based on your ministry and where everybody's at, and like, but
Wells 306 says, but our hymnal has 635 hymns.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how many of them are amazing?
I think a lot of churches will have a song list. Like, I think most churches have a planning center song list of like 250.
They just never pull any out.
Right,
yeah.
but like, you might have an active song list of about 100, but probably half of those you rarely ever do. Like, there are songs they're seasonal, they're Christmas, they're a hymn that you do every once in a while.
Those are a little different.
But like, the bulk of the songs that you do, like, it should be a small number. And then, quickly, one more question about this, and then we'll move on, because there's some other general topics that I see a lot coming in the chat. How often to introduce new songs? Because that was related to the question Bradford asked. Yeah. How often would you introduce a new song?
I'm introducing my first new song since I've been at Oasis.
Oh, wow.
Well, last month I introduced Battle Belongs. That was the first new song I've introduced.
I got to play guitar on it, which was a treat.
Oh, you killed it too. And then next week we're introducing a new song, "Breathe on Us," which is great. So I don't like. Here's the thing. Brad said this earlier. Don't introduce any new songs until your musicians are showing up on time, everyone's prepared, your in-ears sound great.
One step at a time.
Like, get all those things settled. When I first started Oasis, the first 3 months of worship was songs I could do in my sleep. Mm-hmm. Because I knew the last thing I needed to worry about was learning the bridge to a new Phil Wickham song. And so you got to do that. Like, just scale back. There's about 8, Waymaker, How He Loves. What are some other songs that are the same 4 chords?
Great Are You, Lord.
Great Are You, Lord. That goes to the one on the bridge, but other than that.
We'll let that slide.
Ooh. Yeah. So there's a handful of Yes, I Will.
Yep.
Yes, I Will.
That was a little tough.
Yeah. But it's the same chords. So, like, pick 8 or 10 songs that have the same chords over and over and start there. Then you can start really working on the groove, getting your in-ear mixes, getting sound right, getting your gear right. And then once all that's good, have a blast.
Okay. Speaking of, I'm going to segue. You mentioned in-ear mixes. Bradford, have you noticed this? There's a lot of questions about...
Yeah,
I saw a couple on Instagram.
IEMs.
Too. Moving to in-ear monitoring. A lot of questions about that on your team. So, quick poll. Let us know in the comments. I'm actually really curious. I would love to do some like general polling to worship tutorials, like everyone, anywhere, like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Like, what are people using? There's a lot of questions I have. I've got a lot of questions for you people. Got a lot of problems with you people.
And I'm going to tell you what.
Now I'm going to tell you about them. All right. A lot of questions. One of those would be, what are you using to monitor? Are you using wedges, like the floor wedges?
Yeah. Wow.
Or are you using in-ear monitoring?
I'd be curious to know if you haven't changed. Do you know the reason why? I would be curious to know if there's
changed to in-ears.
Yeah, like if you're still like no in-ears, no click.
I bet budget is a big reason.
And that's what I'm wondering.
Budget and know-how. I think
I'm just curious. It's honestly, it's not bad, and even if you don't use tracks and you just use click, or even if you don't use click, you could. If everybody learns how to use in-ears semi-decently, I feel like the level of like the mix in the room, the way the musicians sound, it instills confidence and raises the roof. One thing though that when Fuller was talking about that, the thing I thought about, we see these songs, we see these videos from churches on YouTube and whatnot, and we see like, man, that's special, and we go, I want to cultivate with my team. I want to cultivate something this special. But we neglect the fact that that team, that video that we saw, that team has built a foundation.
You're seeing decades.
You're seeing
of work.
Lots of work, whether or just musicians who are so good at what they do that they can turn on a dime. Don't neglect the foundational building.
Yes.
To try to, and within that, you may find the something special that speaks to your church way more than trying to copy something else at another church. Way more.
And that's like musically, as far as like craft at your instrument, and spiritually, as far as like your walk with the Lord and your dedication to your church and the leadership within your church, like that all goes into what you see in a video from any number of churches on YouTube. Let us know in the comments, are you using in-ear monitoring or are you using wedges? So far, I've seen only people saying they're using in-ear monitoring, which is surprising because I kind of figured that I would see most people, like a surprising number of people say they're not using in-ears. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before and I'll be wrong again. Let's talk a bit about changing from wedge monitoring to in-ear monitoring. Fuller and I talk about this in the worship manual. There's a whole section.
I've actually done this twice at a church.
You've made this switch. So I think step one is go slow. Like you don't want your volunteers to show up. See, we got wedges. All right, both. Wow. I think there are people who do a hybrid approach. Like your back line is on monitors, and maybe your vocalists are on wedges, are hearing wedges, which is nice. Yeah, that's a cool way to go. Anyway, go slow. You don't want your volunteers to show up one week and be told we're using in-ear everything is different.
Yeah. See, they're all that. Somebody goes, most of your users. But those who don't use them probably don't watch our stuff. And with Marcus, the timing is just too perfect because you said that, and then there's all these people wedges.
So
you know what's funny?
Let's talk about switching. Let's talk about making the switch.
So actually, there's two sides of the conversation, and I'll talk quick. But one is expense, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're trying to get 32 in-ear stereo mixes with wireless units, you're looking at $60,000. Most people can't and shouldn't do that because it's not being a good steward of their budget.
It's not beneficial.
Yeah, but people like us who've been in the trenches know that there's always a cheaper way to do it. And so if you just eliminate the wireless piece and you go, how can I get wired in-ears? Meaning I've got a really long headphone cable, which by the way, you can extend to eternity if you need to. Really. I've got a really long headphone cable straight to the board. You are going to be able to get into the in-ear experience for a tenth, maybe even less of the cost, depending on your board. The board is your soundboard is the main hiccup to whether or not you can shift over to in-ears easily. And so there are cheap ways to do it. And like Brian said, the biggest thing is getting a vision for why. Yeah. If you just want to do it, it's not a good idea.
Have the why.
But there's a billion reasons to do it. I wouldn't want to use wedges. You can't use clicks. You can't. I mean, it's just a whole nother thing. Sound guys actually love it when you're all using in-ears because they have more control. So there's a cheap way to do it.
To keep fighting with somebody going, can I get more of this on my monitor? And then the other person goes, can I get more of me? And then
I think I might even actually put an ebook together on how to convert your system to in-ears cheaply because it's not even very expensive to do.
I made a video about that.
Yeah. Like a step-by-step process.
Just transcribe it and sell it for profit.
There you go. There you go. I'm going to download it.
It's like how to do in-ear monitors for like $100.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about like for the entire team. Yeah. For like the whole. Yeah.
That's what he meant.
So it's all you really need. Well, okay. So your board. It depends. Now the question you have to ask is, well, the first question that I think you should tackle is you got to get your team needs to be on board with it.
I wouldn't even say that's a question to tackle. I think that's something you have to navigate before you do any changes.
And so,
because it really shouldn't be up to them.
We've been in a lot of meetings before where it's we're going to enact some sort of a change that's going to affect the whole team. And Fuller's, you do this, and I've watched and learned. It's always really good to get key volunteers on your team to invite them into the process of it. Because if you have an ally on your side that's part of your volunteer team that has influence over others, and they're excited about it too, it's contagious. Yeah. Right? You don't want to just you don't want to just spring a new thing on people and everyone's just like shell shocked, like, well, this is not going to be good. Like you want to have key volunteers come in and you know who they are. You know who your high capacity volunteer leaders are.
Yes, you do.
If you don't have them yet, we can talk about how to do that. Excellence attracts excellence. chaos.
Tracks chaos.
Chaos like makes them
repels excellence.
Run for the hills.
Yes.
So if your worship team is chaos and you don't have any high capacity worship or volunteers, and you're like, why don't I? Well, that's why. Into the chaos. Okay, but you want your high capacity volunteers to be on board with the changes. Yeah. Bring them in. Give them a voice.
Yes.
Allow them to speak into the process because they're part of it. And if they're high capacity, we use that term. That's the term we use.
Yeah.
If they're great leaders, you have great leaders on your team as volunteers. If they're great leaders, you want them to help you lead. And so that will really help turn the tide of like the volunteers being on your side. But you got to do it slow, and you've got to really communicate why you're doing, like Bradford said, the why behind the what. Really communicate why, and give your team a vision.
Yes.
Like describe to them and show them, tell them about why it's going to be better after you make this change. All this happens before you ever do anything.
Yeah.
You need to talk about this with your team and let them know what's going on. And then you need to really do your research and make sure that the system you implement is easy for people to
don't do it poorly.
Go in.
Yeah, that's what people's fear are.
Yeah.
I've never met a musician that didn't want a better experience for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is that in-ears will lead to that. But you better make sure it's a better experience, because that's exactly what they're afraid of, is not having a great experience, especially the old school guys.
Yeah.
They're afraid that it's going to be too complicated or it's not going to sound good.
It's not going to sound right.
Which is why you take it slow, because you better get that sucker working perfectly.
Yes.
Because one of the things Brian said when you came with me at Oasis, you're like, dude, the ear mix.
It sounded like an album.
It's like because
so good.
Because I want you to be excited about it, right? And if you don't do that, the whole thing will be a big disaster.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the power of a one-on-one. You're going to have one guy that just doesn't want to do it. That's when you take him to lunch and you just say, you explain to him and you ask them, what can I do for you that would make you want to try this? Mm-hmm. Like, what could I do? What steps could I take for you to give me a chance to show you that this is going to be awesome? Yeah. When you ask that question, their guard's going to go down. Unless they're just a jerk. And that's a whole nother
story about
this
how they
is probably not
transition to a different area of ministry.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, this is probably not the first time you've interacted with this individual where you realize they were resistant. There's a difference between being resistant to change and like being a jerk about change.
Yes.
Like a lot of people. Some people say they like change, but they don't really mean it. What they mean is they like change on their own terms.
That they do, yeah.
And then most people don't,
Me
because
included.
I think
we're all that way.
We're all that way. There's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? Apparently, I don't know. Have you read it? I think it's like 50 pages. It's short.
Not that long.
And like the whole idea is,
we don't get muted over here.
We love what we do and how we do it, so that when something changes, we're like, oh, wait a minute.
Without people telling us,
or
like,
hey, I'm back.
So, like, an example would be, can you take it in steps?
Yeah.
Like, can you try rehearsals with just in-ears for a bit?
Yes.
Could you and, like, the worst idea would be to, like, expose everybody, like, 1 week, and you're like, all right, it's Thursday night, hey, everybody, maybe you've been talking about it for weeks, but you certainly don't want it to be like, we're using in-ears at rehearsal tonight, and we're all going to be using them on Sunday.
No matter what you say or do, I don't care.
Well, I just mean, like, because everybody on stage is probably going to look really, really weird on Sunday. Without being used to how to utilize in-ears. So take it in steps. Maybe, like, the back line, like, maybe your back line's, like, drums, bass, and, like, keys or whatever. Where if you separate everybody into two lines on stage, maybe, like, the back line gets them 1 week, and they get a few weeks to get used to it, and then, like, take it in steps.
I always do, just the first thing I always do when I bring in-ears for the first time, me and the drummer.
Yeah.
That's it. And no one else even knows. Me and the drummer are going to lunch, we're having coffee, he's helping me set up, we're showing up on off times practicing, and then we're just killing it. And then before you know it, everyone's like, dude, when can I get a set of this? That's pretty awesome. You don't have to do the whole team, and that's like the worst mistake you can do. So,
throw them all into it without any warning.
Can I address one thing real quick?
Yeah, please.
Somebody said the problem with multi-tracks is it eliminates flexibility.
Talk about that.
And spontaneous worship.
I saw that comment.
It doesn't, because
it's not true.
Just turn the click off. Like if I'm in a song and I feel like the Spirit leading, I'll just stop the click and we'll go somewhere else. Like if you become reliant on the click, like you don't have a drummer, so you have the drum tracks on the click, not a good thing.
That's different.
Or if you have to have bass because you don't have a bass player, you have to look at that as a temporary fix. If you've been running a ministry for 2 years and never had a bass player because the click has it, you're bound at.
That's a crutch.
That's not a good thing.
You don't want a crutch.
So once you get a click is to accentuate and keep people in time and do all these cool media sync things, but you got to get to the point where you can do it with it or you can do it without it, and then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like there's always times in the service where I'll just kill the click and I'll do something different.
Yeah.
And now I got to know my band's ready, but
I find, I'll say one thing about this and then we'll move on. I find too that the spontaneous moments happen after
the song.
You usually play the song the same way.
Yeah.
Let me demonstrate every worship song that we play.
Intro, verse,
maybe a double verse, chorus,
Down chorus.
Down chorus, Brian. You got to come back in on the turn with the band.
And that can include pre-chorus, verse 2, pre-chorus, bigger chorus, bridge,
Brad throws on 8
bridge,
reverbs.
bridge, solo
I don't use a lot of
perhaps.
reverb.
Yeah.
Down chorus, done. Guess what? Now you can be spontaneous.
Exactly.
You do that. You typically do that. Like you play the song like the way you practiced it, or that it goes. And then at the end, it's like, this feels really good.
Yeah.
Let's stay in this moment.
Yeah.
Then stay in the moment. But the fact that you used tracks or a click and a guide to get you through the part that
Whatever, yeah.
that the way it always goes, that doesn't mean that you can't be spontaneous. And if you're like in that down chorus, like after the first verse, you're like, something's happening. I want to camp out here.
Kill it.
Give yourself use the technology available to us, and there's some great stuff. Fuller's got some content coming out about Looptimus that you've been using, like integrating with Ableton or Logic or whatever you use. Like, give yourself the ability to
Freedom.
change.
Yeah.
Freedom to make a change in the moment. But like the technology we have available to us, and it's affordable these days.
Yes.
It's getting more affordable.
Use things like track, and if you don't use tracks, that's great. I mean,
Great for you.
We're not using tracks where I'm playing.
I
it's
use a
fine.
click and a percussion loop, and that's it.
Yeah, and so it's like
It's the main stage.
We're pretty passionate about, like, people like to demonize tracks.
Yeah.
And it's a foolish argument.
Yeah,
I think
it
it's
is.
not a hill worth dying on, and
Yeah.
there's ways you can use them and still be spontaneous. And I don't mean to we don't mean to come down on a person that says that. It's just we're just passionate about it.
Well,
Okay?
and authenticity is huge.
Yeah.
Like, I would personally rather see you and your guitar singing your heart out for Jesus than you and your guitar and a 60-piece orchestra on track. Like,
that doesn't feel good.
It doesn't really work that well. Now, if you have a 30-piece band and there's a string section underneath, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just really, to each his own.
I want to say thank you to a few people for super chats. One of them has a question involved that we could talk about for a long time. I don't know if we're going to do that.
I see that.
And it's actually something that the three of us have or are going through, so it's kind of close to home.
Yeah.
SK105, thank you for your super chat. Says, as a fellow Brian, so his name is Brian.
Nice.
And he's a chem
with
major.
With a Y. I mean, with an I.
And which I was, if you don't know my background, I was a chemistry and a biology major in college. So good to see you again. Good to see you, Brian. And let me know in the comments, what are you doing with that chemistry degree? Are you using that chemistry degree that you got? Because I sure am not. But it did allow me to meet my wife, because I worked in that field for a while, and so
nothing
does my
else.
wife.
There you go.
Nothing else.
Totally worth it.
That's the same way I feel about culinary school.
Chris, thank you for your super chat. How do you know if you should go from being bivocational to full time? What does it mean to in a full time in a church? So Chris is working bivocationally as a job.
Yep.
Not in the church, and I assume you're part-time working for a church, which is lots of people do.
Yes.
That. I would probably assume most people that work for a church are bivocational.
A lot of people.
I think we see like the mega churches of the world that have like hundreds of people on staff and they're all full time.
Yeah.
And think
that's a small percentage.
And think
like
that's the
2%,
norm,
maybe?
but it's a small percentage of churches.
Yeah.
And most churches, what's the average attendance for church in America?
I think 78.
70 people.
Yeah. So most pastors are part time.
A church of 70 people, it would be difficult because I was I served in one for years. that was right around that size, 2 of them.
Yep.
And it was very difficult for us to
Yep.
employ. I was part-time. I think the pastor was I think most people working in churches are bivocational. I could be wrong. That would be another question that I would like to poll. What are you using for in-ear monitoring?
Yeah.
Are you bivocational if you work for a church?
Yeah.
And you're thinking of going full-time for your church. That's change.
Yeah,
How do you
it's a big
know?
change.
How do you know if you should? How do you know if you're called to it? Called in quotation marks.
It's a great question, but I can say for all 3 of us, there was a time in our lives where going full-time at a church was the perfect scenario for us. It was, everything was right about it. For me, for you, and for you.
Yeah.
Right? So, this is a very personal...
Actually, I have a different story.
Yeah.
But it was right.
Yeah, it was, but it's always different timings, right?
Doing it came out of a really heartbreaking time. Yeah. Which I think happens.
Yeah. So it's a very personalized question, and really only you can answer it between you and your family and God, and then the church, obviously. But for me, it's just like when I left full-time ministry, it was the right time. You know, I did it for 15 years, and that was one of the greatest seasons in my life.
All 3 of us have left full-time ministry to go into
other things.
Well, full-time ministry as like a full-time
You're
paycheck.
being full-time paid staff.
Right. So, and it's like, look
at a church.
We would have never even met if it wasn't for full-time ministry. No. So it's like, there's a season for you that only you know. But from a practical perspective, I would say you do need to make a good financial decision. Because I've seen a lot of people.
You need to be able to support your family.
I do think that if you're married and you have kids, you have a financial obligation.
That's your first ministry.
Yeah, I have seen men make bad financial decisions because they just felt like they were supposed to work at this church, and it ended up being a really bad experience, and it put their family in a bad situation. I personally don't think that's God's plan for us. No. Now, if you and your wife, you're like, we're all in on this, like missionaries, like this is something God's calling to do, easy decision. But I do think you have to look at a financial piece. Is it a smart, wise decision? And then from there, is it something that you want to do? And is it something that, if you're married, your wife thinks is a great idea? I have found that my spouse is a very good judge of situations.
Usually that's true.
You know, so
more
it's like...
specifically of my own situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Really good at telling me how I should do things.
Yeah, so obviously it's between you and God. But there are external circumstances. I always feel like when God moves, things are easier. Like, it's just an easier decision to make. For me personally.
Blatant a lot.
Yeah.
But a big part of that is being in tune with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, if you... So I think there's teaching in the Bible, or there are examples in the Bible. If you continually like are not open and receptive to the leading of the Holy Spirit, it becomes harder and harder and harder to hear that voice, follow that lead. And that's a thing that I fear when it comes to decisions in my life. Like, if I grow distant in my relationship with the Lord, how is that going to affect the decisions that I make for my life? Because are they going to be in step with the Holy Spirit anymore? Because you don't want to be... are you motioning to my cat, Fuller?
Mr. Cannoli's here.
Oh, Mr. Cannoli. Sam!
Oh my gosh.
Come on up,
Come on up, brother. We're live on the internet.
You can join us. I just asked Fuller, are you motioning to my cat?
And I thought like one of your kids was here or something.
Sam, come on in. You want to get it? You're live on the...
Great, now all of us just got uglier.
I can only imagine.
I don't have a chair.
You haven't heard that one before?
I have not heard that before.
I don't have a chair for you.
That's okay.
Is that okay?
Wait. I'll get a stool. We'll get a stool.
So, we're talking about... Here's the question that was being asked. You're on Worship Leader Wednesday Live. Everyone, this is Sam Cannoli.
Hey, Sam, you sit here.
Sam is a friend of the channel and leads... you are the worship director.
Yes.
At...
Hope Community Church.
Hope Community Church
in Raleigh.
Which is a...
There you go.
This is neat.
I would describe you as a very high impact church here in the community.
Well,
how would you describe Hope Community Church? It's a large church.
It's a large church. I mean, if you follow along the outreach 100.
Yes.
You know,
sure.
I don't know how. Whatever. I think we're number 28 in the country.
Wow. All right.
Churches? Of the largest churches, in the country.
And you are the guy in charge.
Yeah. Well, worship.
Worship.
Yeah, the Lord knows where to put me. So,
Amen.
So yeah, so I've been blessed to be able to serve an incredible leadership team there, and as well as an incredible staff and volunteer group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy,
Awesome.
okay, so Sam and I have had a couple conversations. We did a conference with you guys.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah, just
It was
recently.
awesome.
In May. Yeah.
And so, actually, so we're talking about this question that was asked by a
We're
gentleman
talking about change, by the way.
named Chris. The topic of this show
Wow,
is
buzzword.
topic of this show.
My Lord.
This internet TV show it says, how do you know if you should go from being bivocational to full time in your church? What does it mean to be, quote, called to it, being called to ministry? So it's funny because the reason I was connected with you was through our mutual friend Chris Sly.
Indeed.
So
Yes.
Chris.
Come on in, Chris. We got a chair for you, right?
I was talking. Jerry.
Well, what you don't know, Sam, is Chris is right up there.
Right. That would be awesome. Chris Sly.
We asked you if you knew Chris Sly. The test says yes.
So,
Oh my
so
goodness.
Chris Sly and I
bad.
did a video called "You Are Not Called to Be a Worship Leader."
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And
That was a good one.
In that video, which was
Clickbait.
it was clickbait. It's true, but we did talk about it, so we
Right.
delivered on the bait. All right. In that video, we talked about something that I am personally going through. Is your calling is to serve the Lord.
Right.
And you can serve the Lord as a full-time vocational minister in a church and have a title of whatever it is. Or you can serve the Lord as any other profession that you can think of.
A plumber, a
And-
barista,
Absolutely.
And
a mom, a dad,
YouTuber,
YouTuber.
small business owner, right? And I struggled with this because I quit my job, full-time job in ministry 3-4 years ago.
You told Jesus you didn't want to work for him anymore.
I said, I'm done.
Exactly.
I almost said something that I think will get me in trouble. I'll tell you guys offline.
That one goes way back.
Yes.
About that?
I'm glad I didn't say it because it would have gotten me in trouble. But these guys will get a laugh. Okay,
I'm like cycling.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
I can
focus,
text you.
Focus.
Okay, so I struggled with this. This was hard for me. First thing that was hard for me was I run a company and a YouTube channel called Worship Tutorials, and I'm not a worship leader by title. Like, am I some sort of a fraud or a phony? I struggled with it because I was put into a position because my church needed a guitar player where I didn't lead worship anymore. And so I've only started leading worship in the past couple weeks. And I went years without leading worship.
Right.
Am I a worship leader? I struggle with this. These are things that I really struggled and still probably do to this day. In fact, I was having a conversation with someone the other day. I'm like, I need to know why I've gone through this period in my life. I really want to know what was the Holy Spirit, what is the Lord teaching me, doing through me in this time where I was a worship leader for a long time. I have, I make resources for worship leaders, but I don't lead, really. I'm just on the team. And I think that's great. So calling is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
We are all called
Yeah.
to serve the
Yes.
Lord with everything in our lives.
Amen.
What that looks like to you, Chris, or if you're watching, is going to be very different.
Half hour later.
And
It was all of us. It was all of us.
right, what that looks like is going to be very different, and really only you can know it. And I always talk about it. I always think about it in terms of doors and opportunities. Like the Lord will open doors and give you opportunities, and in faith, we are called to step into those. And so that might mean working for your church full time. And like Fuller said, like I think that if we are in tune with the Holy Spirit, and on a day-to-day basis, and it's a relationship for us, those things become a lot easier to see.
Yeah.
If we're not, they become very difficult to see, and those decisions get really scary.
Yeah.
They're scary anyway, but it's a little
It's a
easier.
different kind of thing.
It's a little easier when you know that this is what God is calling you to, and you trust and believe that God is going to provide through that. But it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, and you won't have difficulties in whatever things. Anyway,
Also,
that was,
I would recommend a book called H3 Leadership.
I read
Hungry,
that.
Hungry.
One
You
of the
did.
5 books I've read.
By Brad Lomanek. He talks in it about the difference between your calling and
Watch his
your assignment. Just because your calling will not change throughout your life. Your calling is going to be serving the Lord, serving His kingdom.
That now.
But your assignment might be working at a church.
That's right.
But then next year it might be
something different.
Running a landscape company. And so it's really important to distinguish the two. And so right now you're actually looking at an assignment. Is this an assignment God has for you? So it's a great book. Check it out if you can.
And that's a lot of what Chris and I talked about. And the danger is when you start to equate your identity to your assignment. Because then when your assignment ends, you
feel like a fraud.
You're like
that's bad news.
You're like, what's his name? The dude. This totally go looking in the puddle. Who am I? What's that movie? Zoolander. You're Derek Zoolander looking into a puddle, saying, "Who am I?" And the puddle looks back at you. I don't know. Right? You don't want to be Derek Zoolander. All right.
No, you don't ever want to be.
There's a lot of reasons why you don't want to be
It's
Derek.
nice to be really, really ridiculously good looking.
There's more to life than being really ridiculously good looking.
This goes off the. So, Sam, you've never been in a
What is this,
Leader
a school
Wednesday
for
Live.
ants?
I have not. I
This
have
goes
not.
off the rails often.
I'm enjoying this very much.
So, I will say this. I've had a handful of conversations with Sam recently, and I have been, some of the things you've said to me are like, I'm so impressed by them and appreciative of the way you lead your team. And so I would love to have you in more Worship Leader Wednesday Lives, Sam.
Oh,
We can arrange that.
Oh,
We can.
All you got to do is.
I think the good people of YouTube would benefit.
Clearly he knows how to get here.
He does. Now he knows my address.
Chris, one thing that it wasn't said. We appreciate the vote of confidence you have in us speaking into your life.
Oh yeah, thank you.
But
That's true.
I'm sorry, my wife is teaching me not to say but. And it's a good thing. Think about it. And
It's making me think.
it basically
really
you disqualify
funny.
what you just said if you say but. So I would encourage you to find that person that speaks into your life already.
Yeah,
And
knows
to
your
hear from
situation
them
now.
because
No.
we only know
that's good.
that blurb from you. And if you don't have
Yeah.
somebody speaking into your life, we could be way off base. One thing I've shared before is something my dad shared with me. My dad was a Marine. He was a lieutenant colonel, so he was an officer. So for me to not go into the military, I felt a little tension in high school. Not anything from my dad. I just was like, okay, military
is that what I
musician,
should do?
whoosh,
Yeah.
like complete opposite in my mind. My dad said, well, if you find something you love doing, and people affirm that you're good at it, and you have opportunities to do it, those are some things that he gave me. And so for me, it was leading worship. People, this isn't pat on my own back, but people declared to me like, "Man, I appreciate you leading worship," or like they love having me lead worship. And they would say that, and I loved doing it. It wasn't a lot of work for me. Like it didn't feel like work. It was work, but it didn't feel like work. And then I was getting opportunities, which affirmed that people also thought that I was good at it. So I was getting opportunities because like God was saying like, here, go do this, but also because people were like recognizing that I was gifted at it and I was able to do that well. So find someone to talk to and maybe filter through those. That's 4 things. Find someone to talk to and filter those 3 questions, and that's what I would suggest.
You know, I first of all, when you said that, I was thinking about the story that Sue shared with us in the car.
Oh my God.
Nashville.
Don't.
We'll talk about this
I about
offline,
lost
too.
it. Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
So I was at Fuller's Church. Was that last week? 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
And your pastor said
But I
something.
do have a pending PCO invite for you.
I know. I think I'm going to have to decline it.
I
give you a decline right now. He
It's,
knew.
it's softer online.
it was,
It's softer in a live
In front
stream.
of hundreds of people.
So your pastor said something in church that really like hit me. He said he's doing this series about like hot button topics or questions, and it was like people send in questions. He just talks about them. One was about celebrity
Oh, gosh.
pastor culture.
Yeah.
And he made a couple statements that I was like, that's true. Yeah. One, the church in the U.S. is obsessed with celebrity, and we create our celebrity pastors.
Yeah.
They're not. I mean, there are things that that quote celebrity pastors do that you might say they want to be that way, but we make that happen. Anyway, what he said was, He said, Pastor Bill said, 10 years ago, if I gave you the top 10 most influential people in my life, as far as pastors, they were all pastors you've heard of.
Yeah.
Like famous pastors you've heard of. And he's like, and he goes,
8 of them.
I've never had a conversation with any of them.
Yeah.
And he also said 8 of them are no longer in the ministry.
Yeah, they've had
because they had some sort of a
failures,
moral failure or
ridiculous
financial infidelity or something like that. And he said, today, if you ask me my top 10 pastors, you've never heard of a single one of them, and they're all in my phone, and I can call them at any moment. And that really hit me. And it's like what Bradford was saying, like, we all need people in our lives who mentor us, who are, who influence us, and who speak into our lives, and that are, also in tune with the Holy Spirit. And that's really important.
I feel the phrase, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yeah. At this point in my life, I'm like, oh my gosh.
So true.
So you got 3 of us right here.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's a pretty good
It's
crew.
a good group, right?
Yeah. I'm happy.
I mean,
I'm happy with my life choice.
I used to feel like the best looking guy in the room until Sam walked in. So.
I know, once Sam walks in, it's over.
Sam walks in.
You guys are making me blush.
Yeah, I can tell.
All right, here's a question. This is Marcus South.
He said MD. I love it. Let's go.
Marcus, thank you for your super chat. Here's Marcus's question. By the way, I know we're almost our time is up. It's 12 o'clock. We've been on for an hour.
Our time is what
we do not require a super chat. It's not like a pay to play. Like you have to give us money to answer a question. But if you do have a super chat and you ask a question, we'll get to it unless it's inappropriate, in which case we'll ignore it.
In which case we'll take your money, but not answer your question.
But we will not answer your question. All right.
Google.
Marcus said this. I've been an MD for about 2 years.
Music director.
That's music director in the church, which is often the worship leader, especially in a smaller context. Usually the worship leader is the one who directs the band and tells them what to do. But many of us have situations where there's a separate position, whether volunteer or staff, that is an MD, that there is sort of in charge of directing the band. And they said, I did not grow up in this church, but we have sound problems every service, which is a struggle. I did not grow up in this church, but it has been expressed to me this has always been an issue. So they've always had sound trouble in this church.
The same sound guy?
What can I do? Well, what can he do? Sam, you want to tackle that one? Can we throw you in?
First off, thanks for the question. And the first question that I would be asking is, number one, is it a user error?
Yes.
Or is it an equipment failure?
Yes.
And a lot of times in churches you can have
simultaneous
one or both.
They're not mutually exclusive.
They are not mutually exclusive. But obviously, if it's an equipment issue, then you got to go about dealing with the equipment. And there's a lot of, for the lack of a better phrase, a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? More than one way to skin a cat. So figure out, identify what the issue. I know, right? Identify the issue and deal with that. When it comes to people, it gets much more complex.
And this position in particular, front of house, sound, it's a very high skill set.
They've been there for 25 years.
The sound person.
Sound person has?
Okay.
What am I typing at?
We don't want to make any assumptions about like.
And you've had bad
the
sound for
people in your
25
church.
years?
Yeah, he said the sound guy has been there 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's more than
equipment.
More than equipment.
Yeah.
The first thing that I would encourage
Hope they're not watching.
you to do, Marcus, is number one, reach out to that person that is running the sound.
Yeah.
They've been there for 25 years. They're totally rooted. They've given all this time to that ministry.
Probably a lot of money.
And you know what? It's funny. Sound people are the most. They're the people who get forgotten the most. Think about it. When they do their job great, no one cares. Yeah. No one says a word.
I mean, I care.
No one
in the congregation.
I care. In the congregation, the expectation is that everything is going to go great, and the only time you hear their name called or it's brought up is when something goes wrong. And so, that's not a great way to build rapport. if you go about dealing with an issue and you haven't built rapport with this person, if this person doesn't know that you care about them, that you love them, that you want to help them achieve the best result on the weekend, just like you need the best result on the weekend musically, you better develop relationship with that person. So the first thing would be sit with that person, make sure that if you're going to be correcting something, it's coming from a place of love, it's coming from a place of grace.
Yeah.
Because the truth, without that, without rapport, rebuke without relationship is going to breed resentment. And so reach out to that person, let them know that you care, bring up some of these concerns, and then work towards one or two things to deal with. What's the biggest issue? You have sound problems, that's kind of general. That's like a general thing. Is it feedback? Is it, you plug something in, it doesn't work? Is it it's too loud, it's too soft? There's just a myriad of issues.
The answer is probably yes.
Yeah, right. It's probably a lot of that. The mix sounds
This is something
bad.
that so many churches deal with.
Right.
Because running sound well is a really difficult thing to do.
It's a science.
Yeah. It's a very
And it's a
hard thing to
skill.
do.
It's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And it requires like a team of people who are really highly skilled.
Well, and one thing that I have discovered in churches, and I've been guilty of this myself, is that I haven't personally invested my vision into the sound guy other than Sunday, like, I need more bass.
There it is.
And so one of the things I had to do at my new church is, like, I need to, like, hang out with these sound guys and explain to them what I want. Because they don't know you like bass heavy, or they don't know you like vocals a little bit lower. Like, so you have to actually sit with them, and even harder, you have to find a Sunday where you're not on stage. That you can set out there and you can go, like I did this a couple weeks ago during a run through. I just got off stage and I went back. Brian was ripping the solo to I Surrender, and I just showed my sound guy. I'm like, check this out, bro. And I turned Brian's guitar up like 8 decibels.
The way the Lord intended.
Yeah, and it was like do do dee 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 dee, and he goes, whoa. I'm like, that's how I want it to
And that
sound.
tone was on point.
And that's all I had to do. And then during service, he cranked it up because I just told him. Sometimes we just assume, but if this guy's been there 25 years,
don't
have
you want
sat
the
down
taste
with
of
him?
the glory?
He's probably
See what
had
it tastes
9.
like.
This guy's probably had 9 worship leaders, so he might be mixing like the guy when they had a choir and organ.
That's true.
So you got to sit back there and even play songs through the system and go, hey, what do you think about this? Do you like, because I sometimes we just have to own stuff, and we have to go, all right, what have I done to help?
Yeah, and I always revert back to, if something's not happening correctly, it's my fault.
Yeah, that's a good,
right?
Yeah, that's what leaders do.
ownership.
I take ownership of it, and then if it's my fault, I take back power over this thing and say, okay, what can I do to get a different outcome? And so take ownership of that, Marcus. Hey, it's your fault. But that's not a bad thing. It means that now it's not something that's out of your control.
Yeah.
It's something that's in your control.
Yeah.
Build some rapport with that individual. Pour into that person. Begin to develop a relationship so that you can begin to reshape and rethink and reimagine how your weekend experience is going to go, how your service is going to go. Yeah. And I promise you do that, you'll learn how to communicate with him. You'll learn how or her what they like, what they don't like, what they know, what they don't know. Invest in that relationship, invest in their knowledge and in their education, and you will begin to see results.
Yeah. And Marcus has given some more updates about what's going on. And really, we don't really have time to go into everything because we're past time.
Gotcha.
But like the relationship part of that whole piece, Marcus, is going to be the key.
What's cool is we may have interacted with Sam on a handful of occasions, but we haven't actually like served in ministry like on a staff team together.
That's about to change.
And I just want to point out that it's very interesting that you don't necessarily know the things we share. Like I would be very surprised if you watched all of our hour and a half long
I wouldn't.
streams.
Who wouldn't watch all of it?
But what's great is like you like I don't really know how to pinpoint exactly what I'm saying, but like you gave advice that I think any of the three of us would also say.
Like-minded, yeah.
And so it's the like-mindedness. And like I hope this doesn't come across like as like we're better than everyone, but more of the idea of like this is something that if you like this is true, and the fact that Sam is also saying things we're also saying, like given different context from his perspective and like his experience and all, it adds to it too, just like how we do. But I just thought that was really cool to say that like we would have said something similar
things.
and like I just hope that kind of like isn't lost on the fact that like this is not just three crazy dudes who sit in the same room together all the time. Like someone in different ministry that like comes in and like I don't know. I just think that should have some weight.
And I'm not going to speak on Sam's behalf. He can agree with me because we haven't talked about this. But the three of us, I mean, the four of us, we've all been in positions of leadership and we're talking. This whole video is about change, and really all we've talked about is leadership.
Yeah.
Because it all comes down to leadership.
It all rises and falls.
It does. And
leadership.
The church.
Maxwell.
I've been thinking so much lately about the church in America because that's the place we live, the context. And another point is like the church it's not like here elsewhere in the world. We don't think about that much anyway.
Yeah.
Either, but I'm not going to camp on that. But like the church needs great leadership.
Yeah.
And the church, from the things that I see sometimes, it's like is sorely lacking in great leadership.
Yeah.
And we are passionate about helping you as leaders in the church, and we want you to lead well and to be successful in your stations of ministry. And we're talking from experience because we've made a whole lot of this is where I'm not talking about you, Sam, but you can agree if you want. We've made a whole lot of terrible leadership decisions.
Man.
And it has taught us
23-year-old trying to lead people who have kids and have been in made lots of mistakes.
That's good times.
It has taught us some hard lessons about leadership, and we've also been in positions where great leaders have mentored us and shown us the way.
Sometimes you got to go through Painesville to get to Gainesville.
We just don't want you to make the mistakes that we've made because they're not fun to go through, and like so really what this whole video has been about is great leadership. Yeah. And please know that we have made many mistakes along the way, and hopefully we've learned from them. But that's sort of the experience that we share these things out.
And speaking of change,
we got to wrap things up. It's time to eat lunch.
Let me say quickly. If I
thought he was going to say that.
If I went 3 years with a sound person that just couldn't get it right, and I've poured into them, and I've invested in them, and I've done everything I can, sometimes you got to make a change that way, because not everyone, I mean, sound is a very specified, if I could only pay one person on my team, it would be the sound guy, because it's a highly specialized gift. And no matter who your musicians are, no matter how great you are, a sound guy can wreck it all. So if I am having trouble consistently with a sound person and I've done everything, I might be sitting down saying, hey man, I don't think this is your strength, honestly. I love you and I would love to get you involved in a different aspect, but just because someone's been there for 20 years, I mean, it could just be that people have been putting up with it for 20 years.
That's right.
And until you have the leadership
Courage.
Courage. Thank you, Brian.
Gall.
Yeah.
Audacity.
You will suffer from your own fear and from your own inability to be a catalyst for change. So just wanted to say that.
All right. Couple notes as we wrap up. One, thank you, Sam, for joining us.
Hey man,
maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Yes.
Now I know that we can put 4 people in the frame at a single time. That's cool. All right.
I think we could get one more right here.
Yeah, we could.
Where's Chris Sly at?
We could have a 5th. Yeah. We've got friends who know things.
That's right.
Cool. Let's bring them in. And we can also remote people in. I think this is magic of software.
That's true.
That's right.
We can have Sounds of Worship. Thank you for your super chat. I'm just going to say one thing. He says, we are blessed. He or she says, we are blessed at our church. The worship pastor's been in ministry for 20 years. MD is a music producer.
Nice.
Sound guy is a music producer.
Wow.
Sometimes you get lucky.
Where's your church?
I know.
But you know,
Are y'all hiring?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
a situation like that is, we said this earlier up front, like excellence in ministry attracts excellent high capacity
sure does.
volunteers. And if and like great leaders that are in, because they are in your congregations, trust me, they are sitting in there and they are observing. And if they see excellence displayed in the ministry department, they want to be a part of it. If
Yeah.
it's a hot mess every week,
Good stuff.
their time is way more valuable. And that sounds kind of harsh, but that's kind of the reality
It's the reality.
of ministry. So
Every now and then you get someone who says,
I want to pour
I
into
have
this
to
place.
help
Yes.
because I got something and I'm not doing anything about
Yeah.
it. But that's rare.
Yeah, and really, I mean, like, really great leaders will see an opportunity to come pour themselves into
Yes.
something and make it better.
Yeah.
That's a special thing, and it's kind of a rare thing. But hopefully, you have people like that on your teams. I don't want to feel like what I'm saying is coming off negative
Not at all.
about people and volunteers, but it's just reality of leadership. But thank you for your super chat.
When's the next Worship Leader Wednesday Live?
Yeah,
Wednesday.
so there was a question. Is Worship Leader Wednesday Live going to be a regular thing?
Yes.
Wednesdays at
We're
11.
back.
We're back. It's going to be, we're going to try and do it pretty much every week, every Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And if we won't, Bradford here will let you know via social media
That's right.
that we're not. Right? I guess.
Yeah.
I hope.
If you're not subscribed,
yeah,
you probably aren't
subscribe.
watching because how would you know? But subscribe, follow Instagram, follow
Well-
Facebook, join our Facebook groups.
Cue the sad music.
WT leaders,
YouTube tells me
WT tone.
that like 30% of the people that watch the videos are subscribed. Like 70% of viewers are not subscribed. So
Wow.
If you watch a few of our videos,
I don't know what you're waiting for.
they end up getting suggested in your feed. That's how the algorithm works.
Yes.
You may like and comment on the videos, but you gotta subscribe.
This is the moment of glory for you, where you can subscribe.
That's right.
Click, touch your phone, click the link,
A
subscribe.
lot of likes too. Thank you for the
to
likes.
worship tutorials
Yep.
on YouTube. Hopefully, we will bless your life
Mm-hmm.
and make it better.
We'll get
That's our
Sam
goal.
back more, and he can.
And if you play guitar and use any modeling device that's ever been made, we can help you there too.
What do you think about the Helix?
Helix is awesome.
Should I get a Helix or should I get a?
Do
Comfort?
you have a moment where I can speak to you about
Our Lord and Savior.
Line 6 Helix?
Jesus Christ.
That was blasphemy.
All right.
Jesus is my Lord and Savior.
That's
He
right.
died on the
Wow.
cross for
Way
my
to-
sins.
way to end
Rose
this
again
one. Way
on
to
the
end
third
this
day.
one on a
This is
heretical
my
note.
confession, my
Patriarchal?
confession of
Heretic.
faith.
Heretical.
Jesus
Heretical?
is
Is
my
that
Lord
what
and
it
This
Savior.
is my confession.
Just so we're clear. Okay.
That's a whole different song.
Boy, that's,
All right.
that's a different one.
I'm gonna. Oh wow, there's another super chat. Maybe we should keep this thing going.
Oh, newbie. It's newbie.
It's newbie. Wanted to thank you for your candor and investment in the kingdom. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you for your super chat. Like I said, we love and we are very passionate about pouring into the leaders of the church. And
Is it?
yeah, we believe in the church. We believe that the church is the hope of the world. I believe, and I can say we believe, that there is no greater institution for good on the
We
face of the
believe
planet
in
that ever has
God
been
Father.
or ever will be greater than the church. And the saving power of Jesus Christ. We get to spread that good news through the church.
Thanks for subscribing, Corporal Peanut Plays.
Yeah.
All right.
Yay!
Okay, we're going to end this video.
All right. See y'all next
Now, I'm going to
Wednesday.
tell you guys that I assume the video is going to end when I click this button,
We'll
but
see
it
what
might
happens.
not. So
I'll just
you,
go unplug
y'all
the
watch
camera.
your mouths until I actually
Oh, indeed.
unplug the XLR cable from and turn the camera off.
Just unplug this.
Not that anybody would say anything.
No.
We might.
But I'm just
We
saying.
might just talk about some of y'all.
Like Fuller got here at 45 minutes or 30 minutes before we started, and he came up to the room. I'm like, Fuller, just assume that you could be live on YouTube. I never know for sure. Just assume that it might
I was
be
giving
streamed.
away free investment strategies.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Peace out, y'all.
Thanks for hanging. See you in the next video or next week. I'm gonna finish this. Ready? Bye, everyone. End the
Bye.
broadcast.